Hey everybody, Greg and the other Ryan here, jumping into another season of Castle Rock. We're breaking down the story, Easter eggs, predictions, and theories.
Let's do it. Let's jump right into it. This is episode 4, Restore Hope. This episode starts with a flashback to 1993 Somalia. We're peeling back more layers of the Pop, Nadia, Abdi storyline as we see a young Abdi and Nadia playing right before Blackhawks fly overhead.
So this is depicting the real-life events from 1993 Operation Gothic Serpent, which was dramatized, part of which was dramatized in the movie Black Hawk Down.
We then see Abdi and Nadia's mother, and Abdi has a gun that he got from apparently his friend. She immediately takes that from him and wants to return it to the devil that gave it to him, and we don't see her for a little bit later on while Abdi and Nadia are packing. A tiny skirmish takes place where they're wrestled to the ground immediately, and sadly their mother comes back still holding the gun from earlier with Abdi, and she's shot. She collapses to the ground, and Nadia runs up to her at the very end saying, I could save her, and this kind of gives us our motivation for Nadia's character and why she becomes a nurse in Salem's Lot later on.
That moment too was the motivation for Abdi saving Pop. I mean, we've seen a lot of flashbacks that explain the lives of all of these characters, but this is a moment that he was referring to specifically in an earlier dialogue scene.
Moving on, let's get back to John Carpenter presents Ace Merrill. He's patrolling the streets or whatever in his car, his pickup truck, and he sees Joy.
I think we can assume he's looking for more people to recruit.
Yeah.
Perhaps.
Evening, neighbor.
He tries to lure Joy into his car. She's a smart kid. She knows better than that. And thank God the bus shows up in time, so she gets on that immediately.
Joy finds her way to the local church, where it turns out Nadia is doing volunteer doctor work. And then that's how those two get back together. And from there, Nadia takes Joy home.
This leads to us going back to the Stargazer Lodge, where Chance has to break into Annie's place to go get Joy's stuff. She grabs that lockbox that Joy was asking Annie about in the previous episode and some clothes for her. And she even put minutes on Joy's phone. What a nice person.
Yeah, super nice of her.
Oh.
Now, actually, in that scene, when she's in the house, she does bump into Annie.
Yes, she does.
And that is one tension-filled scene.
Look around you, lady. Look at your face.
That scene is one of a couple of scenes that are focused on bad parenting in this episode. Trying to do the right thing, Nadia goes and actually meets up with Annie to establish contact and that she's got Joy in a safe place. She's at home, and then of course, what does Annie do? She just
bolts it out.
Scooches right around that and goes straight to the house where she confronts Abdi, who has a gun.
Yeah, she's not getting in there, but let's not forget, back in that conversation, two things happened. One, Annie was just straight up lying to Nadia throughout the entire scene. And at the same time, Nadia told Annie, you can't work at the hospital anymore.
That is crucial, because that's her access to the meds.
Back to Nadia, she goes to Pop and tells him that the chemo's not working, but she wants to try some clinical trials. And he's not having it. He just wants this over with, and he wants to call it a day.
Yeah, he's decided he's done.
You tried.
And now you're gonna try. You owe me that.
Back to Ace. Now, before we see Ace, I really dig the establishing shot of just the pickup truck, and you hear the sound and you see a beetle. I think the beetle only works for him so far. I can't wait to see if it travels along with other people.
It is a good question in terms of trying to figure out, like, you know, he's clearly in charge, but, you know, is he unique beyond being in charge? Like, does he have any, like, special powers compared with his minions?
And then a little bit of a, like, a callback mirroring to season 1 where you had the kid watching videos of, like, home video cassettes. We get Ace watching old Merrill home video cassettes on Abdi and the family, just trying to mimic Ace's, you know, mannerisms.
He's doing his research, trying to get into the part.
Okay.
Now, when Ace turns off that television, we see a different face this time around. And this is a new face. We haven't seen this person, I don't think, before on the show.
The reflection in the television that's
This
been turned
looks
off.
to be the possessed soul. This looks to be the one who's taken over him.
Something really bad almost happened. To Abdi, to Pop. Shit even you wouldn't be able to live with.
I don't know. I find I can live with a lie.
And later on, Annie sees Ace at the Stargazer. She hides in her Jeep, but she can overhear him talking. He's speaking French, and we can't make out anything other than he says Abdi's name, so things don't look good for Abdi.
From there, Ace grabs a couple of duffel bags and heads to the Marston house. When he arrives, his, minions
I
are
love it.
standing there waiting for his return.
That is so cool, and I hope this just grows. I have a feeling it's going to be in the church, but man, I just hope when he shows up at the Marston house later in the future episodes, it's just covered with people
Teeming
waiting.
with minions.
Now, Chris and Nadia, we find out that they did have a little bit of a love affair or something going on between the two of them. The reason we bring this up because of what happens to Chris a little bit later in this episode, looks like those two are going to have a confrontation down the road.
That scene basically confirms what we thought was maybe going on with them before, and then it's definitely foreshadowing another confrontation down the road, which I think is also foreshadowed by her confrontation at the Emporium Galorium, that she can kind of handle herself.
Yep. Meanwhile, Pop shares his moral predicament with the pastor of Castle Rock, who has returned from season 1. So we get our
Very first.
The barkeeps are not the same. We did a little test. We tried to check out the barkeeps. They're all different.
We went in and sort of frame by framed every bar scene in the first season just to confirm that the bartender is not a returning character.
It is not.
So Pop's sort of seeking to unburden himself of his guilt for, as we know, killing their mother. I think the sort of secrecy elements to the plot line of his history in Somalia and what he did to their mother, don't all make sense to me. I get that he wouldn't tell them that, but it's weird that he obfuscated that element of his military history.
Yeah.
Because I thought, and mistakenly, that the reason he was helping the Somali community was because of his relationship to the war that they went through, and that he would never told his kids that there was a connection just almost doesn't make sense to me.
Ace brings up his history in the military in the first episode. So, and we already know that Ace is an asshole. So how did he not, even as a bully to Abdi and Nadia, not tell them?
Right. And it seems like it was just sort of in creating extra drama that I don't think was needed. Because I think the dramatic element of, finding out that he killed their mother is strong enough on its own.
So from there, Pop tells Chris he's going to have a living wake at the Mellow Tiger.
We having a party?
A wake. A big, sloppy Irish wake.
Back at Nadia's house, Joy gets the lockbox.
Yes.
She manages to sort of work her way through all the possibilities she can think of for the combination lock.
And what does she land on? Christmas joy.
Inside the lockbox, of course, we find 2 items. There's a handgun. She buries it, but that thing's coming back.
Come on.
That's the rule, right?
Yes.
It's Chekhov's gun.
Yes.
The other item she finds is the CD-ROM, which she throws into a laptop, opens it up, and it turns out to be, I think I predicted this.
You did.
The Ravening Angel manuscript.
Okay.
Which perhaps ties us back to the box.
Stumbling in ruts over bones. Prester Jack. Gun crate.
Next up, Nadia finds out that she can get Pop into the clinical trial, but she's gonna need a copy of his discharge papers.
Yep.
So she goes, sneaks into the Emporium Galorium and digs through his files and finds them, but she also runs into some trouble.
Yep, Ace's goons, but it doesn't look like they're corrected by Ace yet. It just looks like they're the normal scumbags.
Right. Somehow Ace has been recruiting not his goons. That's almost weird to me that he didn't start with them. You would think he would just go and talk to those guys and be
hey guys, come back with me inside the Marston house for a second.
Yeah, they probably totally listened to him.
Yeah.
So what's going on there? While they're trying to intimidate her, or I don't know, worse.
Yeah, I don't know where they're going with that.
She manages to pull a gun out from behind the counter and get herself out of that situation in top badass form.
You even know how to use it?
Back at the Mellow Tiger, Pop is having his eulogy to himself on stage. Ace is there. He's not alone. Ace shows up with the officer.
Everybody's at the party.
And the real estate agent's there as well. And she's eating those eggs. What's up with the eggs? What's going on with those eggs?
I don't know, they got a goop thing going on. Eggs are a little mushy.
When he was looking around too at everyone, his gang, I thought, okay, this is some Children of the Corn stuff's about to happen. I was worried that they were just going to attack the bar.
I thought the same thing. I thought they were just going to lock the doors and
just go to town.
Wipe everybody out. Now that isn't what happens. They don't take out the whole bar. They select specific people.
Yes.
And it's definitely calculated.
Very.
And once you consider what we find out in a few minutes, that the pastor's been converted, that it seems like the new targets were a little bit more in positions of power. I mean, I know the bartender isn't necessarily in a position of power, but the bartender
The Mellow
knows
Tiger,
everybody.
yes, the Mellow Tiger is the center of this too.
Right.
You got the church now, you got the Mellow Tiger.
You've got a city council person.
Yep.
And then the next level of logic there too is that with Chris on board, you can get to Nadia, and then you have the hospital.
This town could be ruined in a month.
What it seems like at this point is that we're setting up for the town getting taken over. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if, we don't see these like little calculated moves again. Like now
This
we're
is
just
it.
going to be, like, I don't know if it's going to be like a month later or something like that, but I imagine that the next thing is we're getting into body snatchers territory.
Literally,
Or the
thing.
or the thing, like especially with the kids, where there's now going to be one kid in the group who is one of them, and I wonder if like we're going to start having one more kid, and then one more kid.
Yeah.
And then we get to like a thing type of like, all right, we got to do the blood test or whatever like
I
that.
hope that's what we're going with the kids, because obviously when you have the little kid taken out, that's only meant to drive the story forward with the other kids, with Chance and everyone else. One of them's going to have to take them down.
While Ace's minions are doing their work over at the Mellow Tiger, Ace and Chris cross the street to the church. I am 100% thinking, as they're walking up to that church, that it is going to be filled with already recruited people.
Like we saw in season 1.
But it's empty.
Yeah.
And Ace lures him down to the basement, where he attempts to kill him. Chris is a little bit tougher than Ace expected.
Well, Cain and Abel, yeah.
Little action there. And then Chris goes upstairs and is taken out by the pastor.
We'll make you good as new, son.
Before we get into our questions and predictions, make sure to subscribe and leave a comment about the story in the comments below.
Okay, let's get started. Constant readers, let's do this. Let's talk about the books right now, specifically Night Shift, and even more so, Jerusalem's Lot. Now, before we even talk about Jerusalem's Lot, the short story, let's talk about one that everyone brings up in the comment section that's also a Night Shift. Sometimes they come back. I watched the movie, the made-for-TV movie. It came out after it. It was another 90s made-for-TV. Nothing is one-to-one here when it comes to people coming back or the ghosts compared to what we're looking at with Ace, especially after this episode when it comes to Ace's character. It doesn't look like we're having anything like that go on. But the themes are still the same. People returning to their hometown to be haunted by their past must face their childhood dreams and trauma. Although Castle Rock, Jerusalem's Lot are not Annie's hometown, I can see how sometimes they come back. It can be portrayed in this season through the Prospector Specter.
Yes. It's sticking.
It's sticking. There you go. It stuck on me. It's Tall Man in the credits, but sure, we'll stick with that at least for another week. Now let's start with Ace's convo with Chris, where he begins recounting the history of Salem's Lot, which he calls it New Jerusalem.
Did you know that 400 years ago, Jerusalem's Lot was called New Jerusalem?
Now, could Ace be a character already laid out in King's Jerusalem's Lot short story? In the book, it's revealed that the lot was founded by one of Charles Boone's distant ancestors, James Boone, who was a leader of a cult of witchcraft that split from the Puritans. Now, we know from that final trailer that we're going to get some scenes back to, I think, maybe the 1600s, and a witch trial or something happens and someone's getting burned at the stake. Now, from what we saw in this episode, that would tell us that we're probably going to meet the person who's inside of Ace in that episode. And it could be, I don't know if they're going to use the name James Boone for whatever reason, copyright, I don't know, whatever it could be. But I have a feeling that's where they're leading this in the storyline. It involves witchcraft and not so much vampires at the moment. But there's still a little hope for vampires because of Barlow. He knew other languages too, and obviously Ace is speaking French.
In our last breakdown, I was really kind of leaning towards Hugh B. Marston as the
Hey, could be
odds-on favorite at the time, but for the third breakdown in a row, I think I need to reverse myself and sort of start over. Each week we get one more layer of the onion skin peeled away, and at this point I wonder if we're almost to the center. When Ace told Chris that the land belonged to the people to whom it was promised, he's basically saying that he, and possibly anybody who is turned, are an incarnation of the original cult that founded Jerusalem's Lot. If there's a named king character that he could be, at this point the safe bet is James Boone, the leader of the founding cult in Jerusalem's Lot, the short story. That said, I'm not totally convinced. The menace behind the cult, whatever the eldritch horror from the deep past, could be something not in King's writing and may be the invention of the showrunners. Since King himself borrowed from Lovecraft, the sky is basically the limit. In this episode we also see more of Chance. My impression to this point is that there must be more to her character than meets the eye. If Ace is the head of an ancient cult, then perhaps Chance is a descendant of the townspeople who destroyed them 400 years earlier.
But more like Satanists. There used to be a bunch of them that lived around here like a million years ago.
Right.
Before they burned them all out.
Okay, how's this gonna end? Is Annie gonna burn down the town and just leave like in Salem's Lot or anything like that? It looks like they're gonna have to have another power to be there to balance out Ace at this point, and it has to be someone else. It can't be Annie at this point, maybe Chance.
So you're telling me there's a chance?
Now, a big question I have on Nadia, when she goes to the Emporium Glorium, she's going through Ace's desk, it looks like, or it could be Pop's, and she finds a bunch of letters for Alan Pangborn from Warden Lacey. Why are those letters in the Emporium Glorium in the first place? Are these letters involving the kid? Do they know the kid was in that hole from season 1 or no? Or is this something else entirely different? Is this more world building? I don't know. Could it be an Easter egg?
It could just be an Easter egg and some world building. Like, you know, the Emporium Glorium is sort of like a junk shop, right? So it's possible that after Alan died, just his stuff just ended up there. Speaking of characters from last season, let's go to the church. The pastor, played by Aaron Staton from season 1, is back and is now a possessed villain. Since we finally have a returning character, we have more connective tissue with season 1 and the potential linked universe/multiverse. We are no longer operating in an uncertainly different version of Castle Rock. Given what we know so far, who else could we see? Top candidates for me right now are anybody who had connections with the Schisma. The pastor does not fit this criteria, but we have been thinking that the sounds Joy heard and the like could be related to the Schisma. Now, all those characters from season 1 just spilling out of the Schisma into season 2 seems pretty unlikely, so we'd like to hear your unlikely theories down in the comments below.
We will see you all back here as soon as possible for episode 5.